Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conquer the Clutter podcast for it is the 31st of March. I want to start off by reminding you of what today I'm going to be, or I have referred to in the poster as the Evil 11. Now, we've talked about the Evil 11 before, but we called them problematic thinking styles. And somebody in the last podcast last week asked, could we go over those? And so I've incorporated them into today's podcast. We may run over a little bit, just giving you a heads up. So these 11 problematic thinking styles are ways that we put a wow in our perception of things. All right, it's sort of like being at the fun fair and you go through those mirrors. This is the way we do that with our thinking. Now, I'm hoping that today the sound problem, which I apologize for, has been fixed. So let me know if it hasn't, and we will adjust accordingly. So, confirm your speaking language. Why are we doing that? Hold on. Where does that come from? I was suddenly going to be turned into someone who was speaking Arabic. I guess that was Zoom's idea. Anyway, hopefully there will be no more thoughts that Zoom has. Anyway, simple version of problematic thinking styles, ways to warp our thinking, all right? And some of these are going to ring a bell with you, so just bear with me. All right, the first is renowned. All or nothing thinking. It's also referred to as polarized thinking, if you hear it called that, or black and white thinking. And what this warp does when we allow it, when we don't challenge it, first of all, we're not aware of it because we do it a lot probably. And we don't make that effort to put ourselves on pause and challenge it. All right. It prompts us to reduce everything to only two options. Something is either right or it's wrong, it's good or it's bad, and there's nothing in between, right? The real difficulty with it is that very, very few times that can be true, and it never reflects real life. By now, I hope that you realize, everyone realizes, that in life, and certainly we have enough maturity, hopefully, and enough experience, there are so few things that are absolutes. And the truth about something is usually found in the nuance of the situation. All right. Context is everything. The second evil 11 is overgeneralizing. We do this. Somebody's in the waiting room. Can you let them in? We do this when we have an experience and we treat that experience, which is a limited experience. All right, now I've got myself filed up here. That's okay, Braden can fix that. All right. When you have an experience and you treat that limited, specific experience like it's enough to guide you through anything that is even remotely similar. Remember, the truth and the path out is paying attention, adding the nuance of whatever the situation is that you're trying to figure out. So, how to deal with something, all right, and get it working for you means that you don't jump at it. This is where on each one of these problematic thinking styles, these little warps we do, shortcuts, I'm going to really stress that skill of putting yourself on pause. 5 seconds will do it. All right. And listening to that little part of yourself that says, how's that working? All right. So, number 3 is jumping to conclusions. Now, we are all susceptible to this, but that's when we put ourselves, use that on pause skill again in order to look at the situation. Usually, when we do jump to conclusions, it's because we've had a rush of emotion. All right. And emotion is a powerful thing. Feelings are a powerful thing, and they can disrupt our ability to get ourselves out of the fog. All right. So let the emotion pass. Just give yourself a few seconds to let that hormonal rush in you pass. Then ask yourself, okay, before I commit to the intersection here in this choice, do I have enough verifiable information to be drawing the conclusion that is probably one of the first things I thought of? All right. And the reason that it's so important is that by the time you have let that emotion influence you to jump to a conclusion, all right, that means you have pretty much decided that emotion, that action of buying on for the jumping to conclusion will dictate the choices that you give yourself. All right. And it usually also, jumping to conclusion, dictates the choices you'll give the other person as well. All right. It's powerful. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. Slow yourself down. Okay. So the fourth evil 11 is discounting the positive. Now, we have talked about a lot about our, I don't know that it's genetic, but I think it's almost a human behavior that has been passed down generation to generation to generation. And that is the negative bias. First and foremost, sifting things through what is really a very loaded habit, all right, of protecting oneself against whatever the negative possibilities are, first and foremost. It's a self-protective mechanism and it has its place, but I would respectfully suggest that you don't give it first place. When you have that reaction, that negative bias habit kick in, all together now, put yourself on a 5-second pause and ask yourself, what am I missing? All right. Because by discounting the positive, that means that you regularly don't even look for or acknowledge the positives that are coexisting. And every time, if you really challenge this, all right, and I would really encourage you because you can affect your mood hugely by always being in a self-protective mode. All right. Open yourself up a little and ask yourself, what else is coexisting in this moment in time that is also true? And no matter what the negatives are that are present, okay, the negatives, yes, they will protect you if you keep your eye out for them. However, they will also color your judgment and make it much more difficult for you to see the strengths and the other things you have working for you. All right. And success is found in balance. These things unbalance you. So there are always positives that are present. All right. And it's almost as though we make a decision on automatic pilot when we buy on for the negative bias. All right. Life is too important. Our mood, the energy we allow ourselves to have and save and have to work with, that is a huge factor in what we're able to accomplish that is important to us. All right. And automatic bias, discounting the positive, that means you're only giving yourself the negative to work from. Is that what you really want to do? You want everything just to be shades of gray in your life? The fifth in the evil 11, I thought that was kind of a funny name. It's you can put my name beside that. Evil 11 is emotional reasoning, all right? Because I feel it must be true. And when I feel it must be true, it's probably, again, because of an emotional rush. Remember, feelings aren't facts, right? They need to be respected because they are the way at that moment in time you're processing things, all right? However, they cannot and should not ever be the only thing that factors the choices you give yourself. Unless altogether now there is a femoral bleed or projectile vomiting. All right. Those are pretty much non-starters. You handle those based on what's causing them. So it's just another way to limit the behaviors that you give yourself. The sixth evil 11 is moral reasoning. You know your moral reasoning when you should yourself to death, right? Should is a shovel. It's about rules. Rules are guidelines. They are not necessarily out of hand the principles we need to live with. Sometimes they describe our values or our experience, and you need to factor them in, but they're only one piece. When you start the shoulding, I should have done that. That's just a really pointless way to beat yourself up. If you didn't do it, it's too late now to go back and redo it. Pick up where you are and look at what the possibilities are. And the possibilities rarely involve shoulds. Can is the word you're looking for, or possibly cannot. All right. But take the time to choose. Don't let it be as a result of an emotional hormonal rush soup going through you. All right. Moral reasoning is when we work from a set of rules, regardless of the context of the situation, and they tend to kind of push us in the direction of double loading all or nothing. So moral reasoning, now you've got that on one shoulder and you are operating from an all or nothing thinking on the other shoulder. Don't load yourself down, okay? Again, look for the context. Context is everything. The seventh of the evil 11 is a double standard, operating from a double standard. Now that can work one of two ways, all right? That's when we use and accept, okay, what might be okay, but the double standard generally divides things into two sets of rules. It can work positively or negatively, however. So a double standard for me would be, for instance, I expect more of myself than I do of you. How's that working with healthy boundaries and limits? Can you see where that would lead you into becoming maybe something like codependent or needy, or putting yourself habitually, your needs after the needs of others, the perceived needs of others? Double standard can work the other way, though, when we give ourselves an get out of jail card, all right? And we expect less of ourselves than we do of the others. In fact, generally when we do that, we also expect the other person to just naturally know the thing to do, what is right. All right. And that's mind reading. Mind reading is for crystal balls. It is not for life. All right. There's one standard, and the standard is whatever your values and beliefs are that incorporate healthy boundaries and limits for you and equally for the other person. Okay. The eighth evil 11 is labeling. Labeling is just reducing ourselves or others to a label, a title, a word that describes something they're doing or some perceived history that we take away from interacting with ourselves or with others. Know this, all right? We are all, I don't care what you've done. I don't care how much clutter there is. I don't care how many times you've tried. Every time you pick it up and try again, you increase the probability that you will succeed a little further. All right, just keep going forward one step at a time. And the labels, things like hoarders, things like messy, things like anybody out there with any experience with ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, there's a list a mile long. This world has a lot of ways to turn us into pretzels, all right? And the labels we apply to ourselves or the labels that we apply to others are just oversimplifications. We are all, you, me, and the next guy. We are all more than the labels that at any point in our life we seem to qualify for. We are more than that. On our worst day, so long as we are not deliberately hurting ourselves, deliberately hurting somebody else, all right, we deserve to be treated with compassion, understanding, and respect and dignity. All right, until we find ourselves our way out of whatever it is that would qualify us, even legitimately, in that moment in time for a label. Don't allow yourself to be labeled and don't label yourself or others. Look for the details, look for the nuance. That's where the truth can be found. Okay. The ninth problematic thinking style, or evil 11, is underestimating oneself. Right. Now, this is where we can find ourselves almost giving up before we start. All right. So if you're having an experience of being stuck on the couch with an intent to actually clear up that pile, and I'm just going to let somebody in there. Sorry, guys. You can just drain yourself of the energy and the motivation to get started. When you find yourself stuck and it's almost overwhelmingly difficult to get started, know that you're underestimating yourself. The question I want you to ask yourself when you feel that way, when that's what you believe you're working with, is change the question. The question needs to be, what one thing am I capable of doing? What one thing? Because really and truly, I've worked with people for 23 and a half years. It is that one thing that you can do, no matter how small it is, that represents the progress that you are going to make if you just keep doing the one thing that you can do today. All right. So when you're feeling like you're overwhelmed, when you're feeling like you're underestimating yourself, give yourself the chance to experience a little bit of joy and self pride. All right. What is the one thing you can do today? And then do it. It doesn't have to be big. The one thing today has a cumulative effect that will get you there. Now, there's a little bit of a catch to that, however. The little bit of a catch to that truth is do not make today's mess tomorrow's work. So think long and hard before you just put something down, or you don't do some small job like wash the cup, wash the plate. Doesn't have to be in soapy water. You're probably the only one who's going to eat off that plate. All right. So do keep today's work, today's mess, today's work. All right. Also think long and hard about what you create in the way of work if you're not feeling up to it. All right. Okay. So the 10th evil 11 is the opposite, and it does happen, overestimating oneself. Now, this is where we don't track how much steam we have in the tank. Or in our haste, we don't factor in other limitations or the context that we're actually working in today. Okay? Because we only have today. Don't promise tomorrow. Okay? Deal with today. All right. And so often we end up creating a disappointment for ourselves. And then what do? Then we talk to ourselves. Sorry, guys, my eye's really killing me here. Okay. Has anybody there, all right, an example of this in real life, has anybody out there actually ever overestimated their ability to clean up an area in a specific period of time? Have you ever overestimated your ability?
Oh, definitely.
I knew somebody would say, oh, that's just too big. Of course you have. You tell me all the time. That's what this overestimating yourself is. All right. And then what happens is you didn't gauge the steam you had in the tank. You didn't gauge the other obligations you had today. And you end up not succeeding. All right. Then you end up labeling yourself and judging yourself for being wrong or being, what is your word for it? All right. Take that word right now, write it down. Okay. Write it down on a piece of paper, that word you use, and then rip it up. It's simply a matter of not assessing the situation accurately with how much steam do you have in the tank and what other reality is playing itself out that day that gets in the way. It's not you, it's your plan that's faulty. The 11th problematic thinking style, or evil 11, is magnification or catastrophizing. All right, that happens when something occurs within your internal response. It's an automatic usually, all right? And in that internal response, what you come to experience is you make it bigger, like bigger, all right, than it really is. And you see it that way. You see it almost as a wall or a threat, when really it's just a bump. All right. We can develop a habit of magnification and catastrophizing things. And when we create that catastrophe, we're actually creating a barrier for ourselves. That barrier isn't there. All right. You can do one thing at a time. Break it down. Never mind what you should do, what you told yourself you would do. Do what you can do. All right. And if that's too heavy or too much, break it down and keep breaking it down until you can carry it. And that will build success. Remember, that is an infinitely doable way to never saying to yourself that you failed. All right. And it will have a cumulative effect, a positive cumulative effect. Just keep breaking it down until you can carry it. Okay. So let's focus on right now 3 steps to overcome the evil 11. All right, because these 3 steps, they're well-known, user-friendly CBT techniques. All right, but what they do is they teach us to generate realistic thinking. Any one of those evil 11s, the problematic thinking styles, any one of those is a wow in our thinking. All right, temporary, hopefully. This is these 3 steps. It's a strategy. It's very portable, very user-friendly. All right, and it helps you check yourself and come back to a position of ownership and power, personal power. All right. All right. They'll help you take back control of your thoughts, which is the whole basis for everything starts with a thought and a feeling. The thoughts generate the feelings. All right. So it's called cognitive restructuring. You might want to write that down. Now, cognitive restructuring is not about living in denial. It's not going to that safe place with the negative bias. All right. Protecting yourself all the time isn't reality. When you can overprotect yourself to the point where you undo yourself. Basically, you immobilize yourself. So cognitive restructuring is not about living in denial. It is not about denying the reality of the problems that you have. All right. You don't have to force yourself to think happy thoughts. This is not about some kind of Pollyanna technique of denying the truth and creating your own imaginary reality. No. All right. The work to be done, however, is simply to process our thoughts in a balanced, rational way. What will that do for us? That will leave us, first, it'll cost us a lot less in a lot of emotional turmoil, a lot of self-blame, all right? And it will leave us dealing better both with ourselves personally, right? And with the reality of our life in that moment in time. In the early phase, cognitive restructuring can feel a little forced. I will admit that. All right. Because it's not naturally what you're doing. And nobody probably taught you to do this. But nobody taught you to do a lot of things that you taught yourself. Is that not true? Have you not learned to do things that other people didn't teach you? You had to actually teach yourself. Well, this is one more that you want to have in your toolkit. All right. And depending, that feeling forced can depend, well, often does depend on how long we've been using any one or the combination of those distorted thinking styles that we just reviewed. All right. And it will involve a little bit of regular hard work, a little bit. But the good news is that, like most other things, the more you do it, the easier it comes to you and it becomes natural. It becomes, instead of that negative bias you go to protect yourself, you can actually go to this 3-step cognitive restructuring as a way to protect yourself. And to energize yourself and to be able to identify the nuances of today. Today is not a replica of yesterday. And today may have very little to do with the reality of tomorrow. Stay in the present as much as you can. If that's hard for you, practice it. It's worth accomplishing. 3 steps. Okay, number 1, write these down. I'm going to say them slowly. Okay. Identify what we're going to call it unhelpful thought is. Whatever that thought is that isn't helpful, isn't productive, probably isn't based in reality entirely either. So identify the unhelpful thought. Maybe you haven't even identified it as unhelpful. It's just a challenge. It's something that stands up against the horizon, sort of, and you're thinking, not sure about that. Second step, pause. Put yourself on pause for more than 5 seconds. Look around you, look inside yourself, all right, and weigh up the evidence for and against. Let's use an example, make it a little more challenge. Yeah, whatever. Make it a little easier. Okay, so let's imagine you meet somebody, all right, and you don't know that it's not the best day in their life and that they're not feeling too good, and for whatever reason they've got a burden, they're struggling, all right. You meet them and you don't get a vibe off them that they like you or that they are interested in a positive relationship, even in this moment in time. And you decide, this person's a bit of a jerk, or, I didn't think very much of this person. I don't think I like them. They seem not to like me. Do you see how identifying the unhelpful thought, do you actually have enough information to work from? What else are you making an assumption about? That's an unhelpful thought. All right. Now, weigh the evidence for and against. Well, their body language isn't expressing something that you interpret as positive. Let me get myself a painting. Spring is here, people. All right. Okay. Sorry. All right. So you're not picking up a vibe. Their body language, their eye contact, their whatever. All right. But how much experience do you have with this? So weigh up the evidence for. 4 would be they're actually there talking to you. All right. They're continuing to listen to what you have to say. Maybe they actually have 1 or 2 contributions to the conversation. The against is the body language. All right. Okay. Go back and find the thought you're telling yourself that is making you decide that this is not a positive relationship. Do you think that you might be jumping to conclusions? You will say that to yourself. Maybe I'm jumping to conclusions because I have very little experience with this person and I don't have enough evidence for or against. The third question to ask yourself, step is, develop a more helpful, rational alternative. Might be to put yourself on pause and say, you know what? From what I know, this doesn't look like it's like overwhelmingly a positive possibility. But I'm not going to decide. I'm not going to decide. I'm just going to let this play out. This will be a one-off. And if I meet this person again, or I ever have the opportunity, maybe I can find out what went wrong this time. Why do we start with number 1? And that is identify your thought. You do that because that is the part that absolutely belongs to you. And you may be constructing a thought into a reality without realizing that that thought is a problem. First of all, it's unhelpful. Second of all, it's moving forward at like warp speed to a conclusion. Right? But really, that thought is just a starting point. Because when we have a negative thought, quite often they come almost automatically. It's amazing how they are quite often the first thing that pops up. You might ask yourself, okay, how quickly did I come to that thought? And is there enough information here that I should even consider making that something I'm going to stand behind? The reason that's that important is because if we don't challenge it and decide to make that thought about a one-off, got to reserve judgment is a good way to put it. We are so susceptible to repeating them. And then that negative thought we have is going to give us a feeling. Okay? And we're going to carry that feeling through part of the rest of our day. And we will be repeating some part of that negativity as we move forward. Okay, that's like wearing your winter coat in 50-degree weather. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. Right? And the more we do that, the more we repeat it without challenging it, the harder we make those thoughts to notice. The harder they become to notice. And then that becomes a habit or a pattern. And the problem with the negative is that it's really going to supercharge something that is almost in human beings has been handed down as a survival mechanism that we need to put the brakes on. All right. So today, I'm going to suggest if you are feeling down or you're feeling not your best or whatever, begin to use our emotions as a signal only. It's a signal. It's a symptom of what? What are our feelings, our emotions a signal of? They're a signal that we need to watch our thoughts because our thoughts are making us anxious. They're making us increasingly negative. And as we allow that to kind of just settle into us, we're putting a downer on a day that doesn't have to be a downer. And we are complicit in it. It didn't happen to us. We filled in all the parts that made that happen 90% of the time. Is that the way you want to spend today? Is that the way you want to have to get over today before tomorrow even comes? The next time we feel that negative, even if it's not to the point of distressed or worried or depressed or anxious, for heaven's sakes, would you do yourself a favor? All right. Ask yourself, what was I thinking just before the emotion set in? I do this to myself all the time because I figure, you know what? Life is too precious. I don't want to waste it following the wrong path today. Whatever today is going to be, I really want it to be based on as much reality as I have the ability. Now, sometimes that's negative, but at least I'm handling the negative. And there's evidence of it. All right. What was I thinking just before that emotion set in? And it's a really great idea. All right. You know that pad and paper you carry with you or you have with you for the podcast? Get a little one, just a little one for the next month, say. All right. A small notepad and log as you get a little kind of a feeling. You're aware of what that feeling is, even a little one. All right. Stop for just a second. All right. And log in just before that happened. What are you aware of thinking? And you're going to unravel your own pattern. And your pattern will be unique to you because those pre-anxiety thoughts won't always be the same. They may have a particular flavor to them, all right? Rate them. Rate them by how strongly you feel that thought just before you're feeling that negative feeling or that feeling, all right? Now, 0 means you hardly noticed it at all. Right up to 10, okay? 10 means that you completely believe the idea, all right? It's like, and sometimes, rarely, when it's so automatic, rarely is it true. Certainly not to a level 10. Occasionally it will be. All I'm trying to get you to do is to take that habitual habit of derailing your day and sucking the energy out of what today is making possible for you. All right? Just do yourself a favor, please. I put a lot of work into these podcasts. And you know what? I want you to come out of them better. Not having sat and listened to me drone on for an hour, but actually with strategies, things that are portable and doable, that will improve your day, your mood, the possibilities of you recognizing that there is an opportunity or that you can do something. All right? So, the good thing about automatic, however, negative thoughts are usually very short-lived and they're usually specific. All right. You have to be having done them a very, very, very long time when they become like everything gets painted in the negative. So the good thing is that negative thought that was not reality based, right, lasts for a short time, especially if you put handles on it and you manage it. And usually it's specific to something, right? However, the other unfortunate part about it is in the moment, they feel totally believable. Totally believable. In that instant that they arrive, you are heavily invested automatically and you have a feeling. Watch the feelings. The feelings are the fuel. All right? Recognize the feeling. Don't act on it. Okay? Because when we look more closely, okay, and we make a little bit of additional effort to logic them out with those 3 questions I gave you before, you can actually learn to turn them around and challenge their logic. They usually involve one of those 11 errors in thinking. All right. So, step 1, recognize if they're what your automatic negative thoughts are. If you go to the trouble of tracking them and logging them for 2 weeks or so, a little longer if you can, you're probably going to recognize a pattern. All right. And that pattern is specific to you. Now, if we're depressed or just down, it's important that we're likely to have more automatic negative thoughts, not because they exist, not because they're any more reality, they're not, all right, but because you're in a mindset, you're in a mood that harbors them, that feeds them and fuels them. So whenever a new automatic negative thought comes up, if you can write it down every time it appears, that puts you in the driver's seat of asking, am I being unreasonably hard on myself? Am I being unreasonably hard on somebody else or in another situation? Is this actually that bad? Because you're not going to do it when it's rumbling around in your head. When you externalize it, it now occupies time and space. It becomes a different type of reality, not vague. You can see it. You can parse it out and find what little bit of truth or what volume of untruth there is to it. All right. The next step is to do just that. Okay. Weigh the evidence. Now, this sounds like a court of law, like it's really, really timely. It isn't really timely. It's amazing how quickly you'll be able to do this if you practice it a little. 3 steps. All right. What is sitting there feeling bad going to give you? Wouldn't it be worth the time and the effort to practice 3 little steps? Okay. So weigh the evidence. The next step is weigh the evidence. We need to take a tiny step back from our automatic negative thoughts. And we need to work out whether it actually has any basis in truth. All right. No matter how believable, but in that instant, it will feel believable. All right. No matter how believable the automatic thought, negative thought seems in the moment, it's usually not basically grounded in fact. That's the reality of them. It's a reaction more than a reality. All right. So let's do you want to go through life with built on reactions? Please don't do that to yourself. Right. You're worth taking the time and making a bit of effort to just peel it back and look at the truth. As much truth as you can see. So let's ask ourselves the following questions. You want to figure out how much basis in fact this has. Okay. Number 1, ask yourself, what I'm saying to myself, would I actually say that to somebody else who's in this situation? Would I? If I didn't, second question, if I didn't feel in the mindset or the mood I'm in right now, depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, just tired out or down, just down, how would I look at this situation? Would I be analyzing this the same way? Would it feel the same way? You know the answer to that one is no. Now, we're not going to say that it's sunshine and roses either, all right? We're not pretending, we're not Pollyannaing ourselves here, but if you didn't feel depressed or down or it was like, you wouldn't be feeling the same way. And if that's true, then is the problem the mood and not the thought, not the conclusion you're drawing? Okay. The third question to ask yourself. How do I imagine someone who isn't depressed or down would feel? So if somebody else I know, I love, I respect, if they were thinking this, because I respect their judgment, all right, how would they be seeing this? And is it possible that reality is somewhere between my point of view, my thought on it, and what I think their thought would be? Now, you can probably never think what their thought, like you can't necessarily adopt what somebody else thinks. That's not a good practice, all right? Entering it into evidence, however, is a good thing to do. And considering it, weighing it. Okay. Because if this thing was as true as it feels in the moment, everybody would be feeling this way. It would be so obvious. The next question to ask yourself is there any objective evidence that this thought is true? So I'm standing here, I'm looking at this person, they're looking at me. This is not going well as an initial kind of encounter. And I ask myself, is there any objective evidence that the conclusion, the thought that I have formed is true? And the highest probability is no, because you don't have enough information. All right. You don't have enough specific experience with this person. Okay. Now, on that pad of paper, draw 4 columns. Did nobody warn you there'd be homework? I'm sure. I'm sure somebody told you when you joined this podcast it was not just a listening exercise. 4 columns. Okay. The first at the top, title of the first column is The Thought. The second column, oh, there's Coco. She's joined us. She's snoring. For those people who don't know, I have 2 Frenchies, and Coco loves to spend time under my desk, particularly when I'm talking to all of you. And then she nods off. And when she nods off, she snores like a trucker. So that will be the noise you hear in the background. Okay. So the second column, the title is Evidence. What is the evidence for this thought? Okay. The title on the third column is the evidence for this thought was second. Third is evidence against this thought. So plus, minus. Okay. And the title on the fourth column is what is a more helpful way to think? All right. You could put question mark there. Question mark is there an equally true, more helpful way to think about this situation? And in the example that I've been talking to you about, meeting somebody, it not going well, forming the conclusion that you don't have anything in common with them and they don't like you and whatever, you're just not each other's people. All right, what would be more helpful in that situation? What do you think? Okay. Put it down in the chat box. What do you think would be a more helpful way to think about the situation? I respectfully suggest that it might be, I don't know. I'm not going to have a conclusion. I'm not actually going to have a thought. That I will decide when I have enough experience with this person and or I've had enough opportunity to find out, was something odd happening today that this started off so badly. Column 4 is what is a more helpful way to think about the situation. That's the title. Helpful alternative thought. Helpful alternative thought would be that title. Okay. Now, when you do this, you know those days that are down, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling overwhelmed. If you don't load yourself up unnecessarily with negative automatic thoughts, even if they just last a second, that's a second too long. All right. The more tools you have, the more ways you have to cognitively restructure yourself while you're in action, right? The more you're going to take control of or develop additional influence in having the kind of day you want, because yes, you can CBT yourself. All right. It takes action to deal with our automatic thoughts, particularly the negative ones. All right. They are often self-directed thoughts. So they're coming from us, right? And we're in control of them. That's what makes them self-directed. It's like being in a wrestling match, all right? But you're making the effort on your own behalf. You're not sitting there letting this swamp of negative emotion flow through you and dictate your day. And they will. These 3 questions and 3 steps will help you feel better. All right. Now, next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about learning how to operate 2 other powerful cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, all right, that will additionally help us lift our mood and keep ourselves on a more positive track. Okay, let me just see what we have here in the way of, give me one sec here. All right. Thanks, Kim. Yes, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And it is a handy dandy usable tool. I love that. Kim says to everyone, I seriously say out loud, cancel, 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 after a crappy negative thought. I've learned that from Jack Canfield. Yeah, that's great. Then I replace it with a kind and compassionate thought. Before you replace it automatically, all right, so that you're in control, all right, or you're developing more influence and control, try the 3 questions and the 3 steps, and then choose the kind and compassionate thought. Okay, let me move here. Okay, let me just see if there's anything here. Yes, there are a lot of ways that people are listing the thoughts that come to mind. And I'm going to have a look at these and incorporate them into what we're going to talk about next week. All right. Additional CBT tools that help us unfunk ourselves. Okay. You take care, have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Can you do it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.